I've been a long-haul trucker for over 15 years, my life measured in miles, diesel fumes, and the endless hum of tires on asphalt. The road's my home, my sanctuary, and sometimes my prison. I've hauled everything from frozen peas to steel girders across the Southwest, where the deserts stretch wide and the skies feel like they could swallow you whole. There's a rhythm to it, the clatter of the engine, the flicker of mile markers, the way the horizon promises something new if you just keep driving. But there's a darker side to this life, especially in places like the misty Badlands of New Mexico. That stretch of Highway 550, running from Albuquerque to Farmington, is a desolate ribbon of blacktop flanked by eroded cliffs and hoodoos, those eerie rock spires that stand like silent watchers in the dust. I'd run that route dozens of times, no trouble, just another job. But one night in the summer of 18, the Badlands showed me something that changed me forever. It was a sweltering July morning when I started. The sun was a relentless furnace, baking my old Freightliner's cab as I loaded up industrial machinery at a warehouse in Albuquerque. The crates were heavy, the kind that make your rig groan on tight turns, and the dispatcher, Carl, was in a foul mood. "Get this to Farmington by tomorrow, Joe, or it's your ass," he barked, cigarette dangling from his lip. I nodded, too tired to argue, and grabbed a breakfast burrito, extra green chili, always from a food truck nearby. The spice burned my tongue, waking me up as I climbed into the cab, cranked the radio to some Lynyrd Skynyrd, and hit the road. The day was brutal, triple-digit heat shimmering off the asphalt, turning the horizon into a mirage of liquid silver. My AC wheezed, barely keeping up, and I chugged warm water from a plastic jug, cursing the sun that made my dashboard feel like a skillet. I'd been driving since I was 22, running from a life that never quite fit. Grew up in a small town in Oklahoma, where the only options were the oil fields or the bottle. I chose the road instead, trading stability for freedom. My ex, Sarah, used to say I was married to the highway, not her. She wasn't wrong. Our daughter Ellie was 6 when Sarah left, tired of my weeks away, my promises to call that I never kept. I hadn't seen Ellie in months, hadn't called in longer. The road takes everything if you let it, and I'd let it take plenty. By late afternoon, the sky started to turn. Monsoon season in New Mexico is a wild card. One minute it's clear blue, the next, thunderheads pile up like an angry mob, black and swollen with rain. I pulled into a gas station to top off the tank, checking my weather app while the pump clicked. Storm rolling in fast, the kind that floods arroyos and turns roads to rivers. I figured I could beat it to Farmington, maybe catch a nap at a rest stop if it got too bad. I'd outrun storms before, pushed through worse than this. So I climbed back in, Skynyrd still blaring, and pointed the rig north, the Badlands waiting like a trap I didn't see coming. The sun was gone by the time I hit the misty stretch, swallowed by clouds that churned like smoke. The first raindrops hit, fat and heavy, splattering the windshield like paint. Then the deluge came, water slamming down so hard my wipers were useless, flapping like drowning birds. Hail followed, marbles of ice pinging off the hood like gunfire, loud enough to make my ears ring. I slowed to a crawl, maybe 25 miles an hour, gripping the wheels so tight my knuckles ached. Highway 550 here is no joke, 2 lanes, no shoulders, just a canyon drop on one side and those hoodoos on the other, their twisted shapes barely visible through the storm. My headlights cut a weak path through the rain, the world shrinking to a blurry tunnel of water and noise. I was alone out there, or so I thought. I glanced in the rearview mirror, a habit from years of checking my trailer, and froze. Something was back there. Not a truck, not a car, but a shadow, massive and dark, pacing me. At first, I blamed the storm. Rain can play tricks, bending light, making shapes where there aren't any. I blinked hard, leaned forward, squinting into the mirror. It was still there, a hulking mass gliding behind my trailer, keeping perfect time with my rig. No headlights, no engine noise, just this thing moving too smoothly, like it wasn't touching the road at all. My pulse kicked up, a dull thud in my ears. I've seen plenty on the road, deer that vanish, headlights that flicker out, but this was different. I eased off the gas, dropping to 20, then 15, testing it. The shadow slowed too, matching my every move like it was tethered to me. I gunned the engine, the Freightliner roaring as I pushed through the rain. The shadow kept pace, never falling back, never pulling ahead. Lightning cracked, a jagged fork splitting the sky, and in that flash I saw it clearer. It was tall, almost humanoid, but wrong. Too long, too thin, arms stretching out like they could wrap around my trailer and crush it. Its edges blurred into the storm, like it was woven from the rain itself. "Get it together, Joe," I muttered, my voice trembling in the empty cab. I fumbled for the CB radio, static hissing like a swarm of bees. "Breaker, breaker, this is Blue Thunder. Anyone out there in this mess? Got something weird tailing me near Bisty, mile marker 112. Anyone copy? Nothing but crackle." The storm must have been jamming the signal, or maybe no one else was dumb enough to be out here. I glanced back again and the shadow was closer, so close I swore it could touch my mud flaps. Panic clawed at my chest, sharp and cold. I've heard the stories every trucker has. Navajo elders at truck stops, sipping coffee, talking low about skinwalkers, shapeshifters that stalk the desert, feeding on fear or worse. I'd laughed it off over beers, called it superstition, swapped tales with buddies about ghost hitchhikers and phantom rigs. But now with that thing in my mirror, those stories felt like truth carved in stone. I pushed the rig harder, engine screaming, tires slipping on the slick asphalt. The road curved sharply and I nearly lost control, the trailer fishtailing as I wrestled the wheel. The shadow didn't falter, it wove with me, effortless, like it knew every bend better than I did. My mind raced, replaying every Badlands tale I'd ever heard. There was one from an old driver, Tommy, who swore he saw a figure pacing his rig back in '95, only to find claw marks on his trailer come morning. Another guy, a grizzled vet named Hank, claimed he'd been chased by a shadow that whispered his name through the CB, clear as day. I'd rolled my eyes then, bought him a coffee, and moved on. Now I was living it, and there was no coffee to make it right. The hail pounded harder, a relentless drumbeat on the cab. Lightning flashed again, and this time I saw eyes, glowing, not reflecting, like embers in a fire. They locked onto mine through the mirror, and my blood turned to ice. I yelled, a raw, guttural sound that echoed in the cab. "What the hell are you?" I slammed the accelerator, the rig shaking as I pushed it to its limits. The speedometer crept up 30, 35, 40, but the shadow stayed glued to me, a predator toying with its prey. My hands were slick with sweat, slipping on the wheel. I thought about pulling over, but where? There was no shoulder, just a drop into the canyon or the jagged rocks on the other side. I was trapped, boxed in by the storm and whatever was hunting me. The CB hissed again, unprompted, spitting static that sounded almost like words, low, guttural, not English. I yanked the volume knob down, but the noise didn't stop. It grew louder, a hum that vibrated in my chest, like the Badlands themselves were speaking. I started talking to myself, anything to keep the fear at bay. "It's just the storm, Joe. Optical illusion. Shadows from the rocks. Ain't nothing there." But I knew better. The Badlands have a weight to them, a presence you feel in your bones. It's not just the emptiness, it's the way the land watches, waits, like it's alive and doesn't want you there. I'd heard whispers from other drivers, strange lights dancing in the distance, voices in the wind, things that follow and don't let go. One guy swore he saw a figure standing in the middle of the road, only to vanish when he swerved. Another found handprints on his windshield, too big to be human, gone by morning. I'd called it road fever, the kind of thing that happens when you're alone too long. But this wasn't fever. This was real. Miles dragged on, each one an eternity. The shadow didn't waver, didn't fade, just kept pace, a silent hunter in the storm. I tried the CB again, my voice cracking like a scared kid. "Anyone please, I got something following me. Bisty Badlands, mile marker 120 now, help, more static, more silence." The radio was useless, and I was alone, just me and that thing. I started praying, something I hadn't done since my mom dragged me to church as a kid. Not to any god, just to anything that might listen. "Please let me get through this. Just let me see the sun." My mind wandered, fear dragging up things I'd buried. I thought about Sarah, how she'd begged me to quit trucking, to stay home for Ellie. I'd promised I would, but the road always called louder. I thought about Ellie, her gap-toothed smile when I'd swing her up in my arms, back when I was her hero. She was 10 now, probably didn't even remember my face. If I didn't make it out, would she know? Would anyone? The thought hit harder than the hail, a gut punch of regret. I'd been running from things my whole life, bills, fights, feelings, and now something was running after me, and I had nowhere to go. The storm raged on, lightning illuminating the hoodoos in flashes, their shapes twisted and menacing. I kept checking the mirror, each glance a stab of dread. The shadow was still there, closer now, its ember eyes burning brighter. I could feel it, not just see it, a weight, a malice pressing against the back of my skull. It wasn't just following me, it was hunting me, feeding on my fear. I thought about stories from the Navajo drivers I'd met, men with weathered faces and quiet voices, warning about the Badlands. "Don't stop at night," one had said, eyes distant. "The land remembers and it doesn't forgive." I'd bought him a beer, laughed it off. Now I wished I'd listened. I tried to focus on the road, on the rhythm of driving, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I thought about my first haul years ago, a rookie barely able to shift gears without grinding them. I'd been scared then too, but it was different, fear of screwing up, not fear of something unnatural. I'd learned the road since then, learned its rules, its dangers. But this wasn't in any logbook. This was something older, something that didn't care about rules. The hail eased slightly, the drumming softening to a patter. I risked another glance in the mirror, and for a moment I thought it was gone. But then lightning flashed, and there it was, closer than ever, its form sharper now, tall, gaunt, with limbs that bent wrong, like a spider stretched into a man's shape. Its eyes were fixed on me, unblinking, and I swear I heard that hum again, louder, vibrating through the cab. I screamed, slamming the wheel with my fist, desperate for anything to break the spell. I thought about turning around, heading back to Albuquerque, but the road was too narrow, the storm too fierce. I was committed, trapped in a tunnel of rain and fear. I started counting miles, a trick to stay sane, 121, 122, 123, each marker a small victory. But the shadow didn't care about miles. It was relentless, a predator that didn't tire. I remembered a story from a truck stop in Gallup, an old driver claiming he'd seen a figure in the Badlands that followed him for hours, only to vanish when he prayed. I tried it again, muttering, "Please, whatever you are, leave me be. I'm just passing through." The rain began to ease, the clouds parting to let moonlight spill across the desert. I checked the mirror, nothing. The shadow was gone. No tracks on the road, no sign it had ever been there. Just the empty highway glinting wet under the stars. I pulled over at a turnout, a wide gravel patch overlooking the Badlands. My hands shook so bad I could barely light a cigarette. I stood there staring at those hoodoos, their shapes jagged and alive in the moonlight. They looked like sentinels, guarding secrets I wasn't meant to know. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the cab, chain-smoking, watching the horizon for any sign of movement. At dawn, I finished the run to Farmington, dropped the load, and drove home to Gallup. At the Route 66 diner, I told a few buddies over beers, expecting them to laugh. They did. An old Navajo driver, Charlie, just nodded, his eyes distant. "Bisty's got its keepers," he said. "Old things older than us. They don't like us passing through." He told me about his own run-in years back, a shadow that followed him for miles, leaving handprints on his rig that vanished by morning. Another driver chimed in, saying he'd seen lights pacing his truck, only to find an abandoned semi in the desert, rusted out from a wreck decades old. I haven't taken 550 since. I stick to I-40, where the lights are brighter and the land feels less alive. But every storm I check my mirrors, half expecting those ember eyes. Sometimes when the wind howls, I hear it, a low, guttural hum, like the Badlands calling me back. I don't answer. I keep driving, keep running, but deep down I know, the road never lets you go, and neither do its shadows. The highway has a voice of its own, a low hum that speaks to those who listen long enough. For 18 years, I've been a trucker hauling freight through the vast, empty stretches of the Southwest, where the roads cut like scars across deserts that feel alive with secrets. There's a strange pull to it, the rhythm of tires on asphalt, the flicker of stars in a sky so big it makes you feel small, the way the night wraps you in its quiet embrace. But some roads, like Highway 83 from Laredo to San Antonio, carry a darkness that lingers. The scrubland out there is a sea of thorns, endless and unforgiving, and the stories drivers swap, ghostly voices, rigs that vanish into the night, aren't just campfire tales. They're warnings. In August of 20, I learned that lesson the hard way. It was a blistering afternoon when I rolled out of Laredo, my Kenworth groaning under a load of tomatoes bound for a San Antonio distributor. The sun was a relentless beast, hammering the cab until the air inside felt like a furnace, even with the AC wheezing. The loading dock was a circus, forklifts buzzing like angry hornets, workers shouting in Spanish over the clatter of crates, and the dispatcher, a wiry guy named Eddie, snapping about deadlines. "Don't screw this up, Ray," he growled, wiping sweat from his brow. I nodded, too drained to argue, and grabbed a couple of tacos from a roadside stand, the grease soaking through the paper bag, the smell of cumin and onions a brief comfort. I climbed into the cab, the leather seat creaking under me, and cranked the radio to George Strait, his twang matching the Texas heat as I pulled onto Highway 83. The sun was sinking, painting the sky in streaks of blood and gold, and I settled in for the long haul, the road stretching out like a promise I wasn't sure I trusted. I've been a road dog since my early 20s, running from a life that never fit right. Grew up in a speck of a town in West Texas, where the wind carried dust and despair in equal measure. The choices were slim: oil rigs, the bottle, or jail. I picked the highway, trading a future I could see for one I could. My mom used to say I'd end up like my dad, a drifter who left when I was 5, chasing something he never found. Maybe she was right. My wife Carla couldn't handle the weeks I spent away, the missed birthdays, the promises I made and broke like cheap glass. She left when our son Jake was 8, taking him to Austin for a life without me. I send money when I can, call when I remember, but the road's a greedy lover. It takes everything, and I've given it more than my share. I stopped at a gas station just outside Laredo, topping off the tank while the pump clicked like a metronome. The clerk, a kid with acne and a bored stare, handed me a coffee that tasted like burnt rubber. I checked my phone, no signal, no surprise. The weather app warned of a dry night, but the air had that heavy, electric feel, like a storm was hiding just out of sight. I chatted with another driver, a grizzled guy named Pete, who was fueling up his Peterbilt. "Watch yourself on 83, he said, spitting tobacco into the dirt. "Heard some weird shit out there lately, CB calls from nobody." I laughed it off, tipped my hat, and climbed back in, but his words stuck, a splinter in my mind. Night fell fast, the sky turning ink black as I pushed deeper into 83. The scrubland sprawled, endless mesquite bushes clawing at the road's edges, their shadows twisting in my headlights like fingers reaching out. Coyotes darted across the asphalt, their eyes glinting like warning beacons, and the air carried the faint, earthy tang of desert rain, though the stars burned clear overhead. No traffic, no towns, just me and the hum of the engine, the radio fading to static as the signal dropped. I sipped the bitter coffee, grimacing, and scanned the road for deer or drunks, the only things likely to break the monotony. Around midnight, the CB radio crackled, slicing through the quiet like a knife. "Breaker 19, this is Lone Star Hauler, stuck out here about 10 miles north of Zapata. Engines shot, need a tow or a jump. Anyone copy?" The voice was rough, like gravel ground underfoot, thick with a Texas drawl and laced with panic. I could hear panting like the guy had been running, and a faint hum, like wind whistling through a cracked window. I leaned toward the mic, keying up. "Copy that, Lone Star. This is Big Blue, about 5 miles back. What's your 20 exact? I'll swing by if I can." "Much obliged, Big Blue," he rasped, voice tight as a wire. "Mile marker 45, off the shoulder in the dirt." "Hurry, something ain't right out here." Those words hit like a cold fist. Something ain't right. I've heard plenty of CB chatter, pranks, tall tales, guys messing with rookies, but this wasn't that. There was a raw edge to his voice, a fear that sank into my bones. I nudged the accelerator, the engine growling as I pushed through the dark. Highway 83 was a black ribbon, no streetlights, no other rigs, just the scrublands sprawling like an ocean of thorns. Coyotes howled in the distance, their cries sharp and mournful, and the air grew heavier, like the desert was holding its breath. I thought about Pete's warning, about the stories I'd heard over years of greasy diner coffee. Drivers talked about 83 like it was cursed, ghostly voices on the CB, headlights that vanished, rigs found empty with no trace of the driver. One guy, a wiry Mexican hauler named Louis, swore he'd picked up a call from a driver who died in a wreck a decade earlier, begging for help. I'd bought him a beer, called it nonsense. But now with that voice echoing in my head, I wasn't so sure. I hit mile marker 45 in about 10 minutes, easing off the gas and sweeping my spotlight across the roadside. Nothing. No truck, no lights, no stranded hauler waving me down. Just a patch of dirt off the shoulder, churned up like something heavy had been dragged through it. Boot prints circled the spot, deep and uneven, maybe size 12, but they led nowhere, just faded into the brush like their maker had evaporated. I sat there, engine idling, the spotlight cutting a pale arc through the dark. Lone Star, this is Big Blue. I'm at 45, where you at? I called into the CB. Silent, then static hissed and I heard it breathing. Slow, raspy inhales, like someone holding the mic too close. No words, just that sound, steady and deliberate, for maybe 30 seconds before it cut out. My heart started pounding, a cold sweat breaking out despite the heat. I tried again, voice tighter now. Lone Star, you there? Talk to me, man. More static than the breathing again, louder, closer, mixed with a faint whisper I couldn't make out. It wasn't words, not exactly, just a low, guttural hum, like something trying to mimic speech. My hands trembled as I turned the CB off, but the static came back, unprompted, that breathing filling the cab like a living thing. I yanked the power cord, silencing it, and sat there staring at the empty road, my pulse a drumbeat in my ears. I've been spooked before. Long hauls do that, your mind conjures phantoms in the dark. Once saw a deer that vanished when I blinked, another time heard a scream on a deserted stretch of I-10 that turned out to be nothing. But this was different. This felt real, like something was out there, watching, waiting. I grabbed my maglite, a heavy thing I keep for more than just light, and stepped out of the cab. The night was still, too still, the coyotes gone quiet. The air smelled of dust and something sharp, like ozone after a storm. I swept the beam across the dirt patch, the boot prints stark in the light. They formed a perfect circle, no start or end, like a ritual carved in the earth. I followed the prints a few steps, my boots crunching on the gravelly shoulder. The desert hummed with small sounds, crickets, a distant rustle, but nothing explained those prints. They didn't lead to a truck, a car, or a trail. Just a circle, round and round, like something had paced an invisible point. My gut screamed to get back in the cab, but I had to know. I called out, voice swallowed by the night. Hey, Lone Star, you out here? Nothing. Not a sound, not a shadow. I stood there, flashlight beam trembling, and thought about every ghost story I'd ever laughed off. There was one from a truck stop in Carrizo Springs, a driver claiming he'd seen a figure standing in the middle of 83, only to vanish when he swerved. Another said he'd found handprints on his windshield, too big to be human, gone by morning. I'd called it road fever, the kind of thing that happens when you're alone too long. But this wasn't fever. This was real. I climbed back in, locked the doors, and gripped the maglite like a lifeline. My mind raced, dragging up memories I'd buried. I thought about my first haul, a rookie barely able to shift gears without grinding them, scared of jackknifing but too proud to admit it. I thought about Carla, how she'd wait up nights, hoping I'd call, only to get silence. I thought about Jake, his gap-toothed grin when I'd toss him a baseball, back when I was his hero. He was 12 now, probably didn't even remember my face. If I disappeared out here, would anyone care? The thought was a weight, heavier than the load in my trailer. I started driving again, the rigs rumble a thin shield against the fear. The CB crackled back on, even with the cord unplugged. That breathing filled the cab, slow and deliberate, like it was right beside me. I slammed the dashboard, yelling, "Stop it." The static cut out, leaving a silence heavier than the heat. I kept driving, eyes flicking to the mirrors, half expecting to see something, someone staring back. The road stayed empty, but the feeling didn't fade, that weight of being watched, like the desert had eyes. I stopped at a turnout 10 miles later, needing to clear my head. The night was still, the stars cold and unblinking. I lit a cigarette, the smoke curling into the dark, and tried to make sense of it. Was it a prank, a signal crossing from another frequency? But those prints, that breathing, they weren't tricks. I thought about calling dispatch, but what would I say? "Hey Eddie, I'm being haunted by a ghost on the CB." He'd laugh me out of a job. I kept driving, the miles blurring together. The scrubland didn't change, just an endless sea of thorns and shadows. I thought about the stories again, the ones I'd dismissed. There was one from a driver named Maria, who'd heard a voice on 83 calling her name, only to find her CB was off. Another guy, a Vietnam vet, said he'd seen a rig in his mirrors, following close, only to vanish when he pulled over. I'd bought them coffee, laughed, moved on. Now I wished I'd listened closer. My thoughts turned to Jake, to the last time I saw him, 2 years ago at a diner in Austin. He'd barely looked at me, his eyes glued to his phone, Carla's new husband waiting in the car. I'd promised to visit more, to be better, but the road always won. The guilt gnawed at me, sharper than the fear. If something happened out here, would Jake know? Would he care? I gripped the wheel tighter, the leather creaking under my hands. I tried the CB again, desperate for a human voice. "Anyone out there? This is Big Blue, north of Zapata. Got a weird call earlier, anyone hear it?" A few drivers chimed in, their voices crackling from miles away. "Ain't heard nothing, Big Blue," one said. "Probably kids messin' with ya." But another, an older guy with a drawl like molasses, wasn't so quick to laugh. "Watch it on 83, he said. "That road's got ghosts." The CB went quiet again, but my hand hovered over it, itching to try one last time. What if the guy was real, stranded, hurt? I'd left people behind before, Carla, Jake, promises, but this felt different, like abandoning someone to the dark. I keyed up, voice shaking. "Lone Star, you still out there?" I checked 45, nothing. "Give me something to work with." The response was immediate, static, then that breathing again, louder, closer, like it was coming from the passenger seat. I froze, eyes darting to the empty seat, half expecting a figure there. Nothing, just shadows. But the breathing didn't stop, and now there were whispers woven into it, words I couldn't catch but felt in my bones, like a warning carved in the air. I yanked the mic cord out, tossed it on the floor, and floored the gas, the rig lurching forward. The drive to San Antonio was a blur of fear and asphalt. I didn't stop, didn't look back, just kept my eyes on the road until the city's lights glowed on the horizon. I pulled into the depot at dawn, hands still shaking as I logged my hours. The other drivers were there, sipping coffee, swapping stories. I told them about the call, the prints, the breathing. Most laughed, said I'd been out too long, needed a day off. But one guy, an old-timer named Roy, didn't laugh. He leaned in, voice low, his eyes shadowed under his cap. "That stretch of 83's got ghosts, son. Drivers callin' for help who ain't there. Found a rig once, back in the 80s, empty, engine cold, with prints just like you saw." I dug into the stories later, asking around at truck stops, piecing together the lore. Highway 83 has a reputation, disappearances, strange calls, rigs found abandoned with no sign of the driver. One tale matched mine too closely. A hauler in 87 called for help, same spot, same story. When they found his truck weeks later, it was empty, the CB mic tangled like someone had gripped it till their knuckles bled. Another driver told me about a woman who'd heard her name whispered on the CB, only to find her radio unplugged. The stories piled up, each one a thread in a tapestry of dread. I haven't driven 83 at night since. I stick to daylight runs, keep the CB on low, the volume barely a murmur. But sometimes when the static crackles, I hear it, that breathing, that hum, like the desert still calling, waiting for me to answer. I do. I keep driving, keep running, but the road's got a long memory, and it doesn't let go. Every mile marker, every shadow in the scrubland reminds me some calls aren't meant to be answered, and some voices don't belong to the living. The desert is a poet, whispering in dust and starlight, its verses carved in the curves of dunes and the bones of forgotten things. For 12 years, I've driven its roads, my rig a lone note in its endless song, hauling freight through the Nevada flats where the sky is a canvas too vast for human eyes. The silence out there is a language, sharp, heavy, alive with secrets that cling to you like sand. I've always been drawn to it, to the way it strips you down to nothing but breath and memory. But in October of 19, on a run from Salt Lake City to Las Vegas, the desert sang me a song I couldn't unhear, a melody of light and fear that still echoes in my dreams. It was a cold autumn evening when I started my Peterbilt, Old Bess, I call her, loaded with pine logs for a Vegas lumberyard. The air bit at my knuckles as I checked the straps, the scent of sap mingling with diesel and the faint tang of coming rain. The yard was quiet, just the hum of machinery and the occasional shout of a worker. Clara, the foreman, caught my eye as I climbed into the cab. "Desert's restless tonight, Sam," she said, her voice low like she felt it too. I nodded, pulling my jacket tighter, and settled into the seat, its leather worn to my shape. No radio tonight, just the engine's growl and the weight of my thoughts. I opened my journal, a tattered thing I've kept since I was a kid, and scribbled a line. The desert waits, but for what? It's a habit, writing fragments, pieces of the road I can't say aloud. I've been a wanderer since I was old enough to know what leaving meant. Grew up in a Wyoming trailer park, where the wind carried my mother's dreams away with the dust. She was a poet, always scribbling in notebooks, but she stopped when my father vanished, leaving nothing but a half-empty bottle and a hole in our lives. I started writing to fill that hole, jotting down the shapes of clouds, the faces of strangers, the way the plains seemed to breathe. At 18, I chose the road over a life I couldn't stomach, trading a small town for the highway's promise. Never married, never stayed long enough to try. My brother Nate is all I've got left, sending postcards from Boise I rarely answer. The road's my family now, but it's a cruel one, demanding more than it gives. I stopped at a roadside diner in Wendover, a weathered shack with flickering neon. The waitress, a woman named June with silver hair and a smoker's rasp, poured me coffee that tasted like tar. I sat at the counter, sketching the scene in my journal, the cracked linoleum, June's tired smile, the desert outside pressing against the windows. A hitchhiker sat a few stools down, an old man with a face like a crumpled map, his eyes sharp despite the years. "Headin' to Vegas?" he asked, voice like gravel. I nodded, wary. "Watch the flats," he said, sipping his coffee. "Lights out there, not natural. Followed me once, years ago, led me to a wreck I shouldn't have seen." I wrote his words down, sketching his profile, deep lines, a haunted stare. "Just stories," I said, but his gaze held mine, heavy with knowing. I paid, tucked my journal away, and hit the road, his warning a weight in my chest. The night was moonless, the sky a deep indigo stitched with stars. Highway 93 stretched like a vein through the flats, flanked by sagebrush and Joshua trees, their twisted forms like dancers frozen in time. The air through the cracked window was sharp, smelling of dust and something electric, like a storm held back by the stars. My headlights carved a path through the dark, the logs creaking in the trailer as I settled into the drive. I've always loved the desert at night, its silence, its vastness, the way it makes you feel like the only soul alive. But tonight it felt different, like the land was watching, waiting. Around 1 a.m., I saw it, a light faint and shimmering, hovering just beyond the shoulder. It was pale, like starlight caught in a glass sphere, drifting parallel to Old Bess at 50 miles an hour. I blinked, thinking it was a dream, one I've had before, a light leading me through the desert to a place I can't name. But this was no dream. The light stayed, weaving through the sagebrush, its glow steady, almost alive. I slowed to 40, testing it. It slowed too, matching me, dancing like it knew my every move. I pushed to 60, the engine growling, and it kept pace, a silent partner in the dark. My breath hitched, a chill crawling up my spine. I've seen tricks of the road, mirages, stars too low, but this was different. It wasn't a plane, not a drone, too fluid, too deliberate. I reached for the CB, static hissing like a warning. Breaker, breaker, this is Lone Pine. Anyone on 93 near the Nevada flats. Got a strange light out here. Anyone seeing this? Nothing but static, sharp and mocking. The signal was dead, the desert too vast for towers. I glanced at the light, now closer, maybe 20 yards off, dipping and rising like it was floating on an unseen tide. My hands tightened on the wheel, the leather creaking under my palms. I thought about the hitchhiker's story, about lights that weren't natural. I'd written it down, a fragment in my journal, lights that lead to where. Now it wasn't just words, it was real and it was following me. A flash of lightning lit the horizon, a storm stirring miles away, painting the desert in a ghostly silver glow. The light darted ahead, stopping in the road. My headlights caught something, a rusted semi half buried in the sand, its cab crumpled like a broken toy. The light hovered above it, pulsing like a heartbeat, then shot back to the shoulder, resuming its dance. I blinked and the semi was gone, the road empty, just asphalt and shadows. My heart pounded, my hands slick with sweat. I've heard the stories, whispers over diner coffee, tales of the desert's ghosts. A driver in Tanapa told me about the ghost rig, a semi that appears on lonely highways, its lights luring you to danger. I'd written it down, a poem in my journal, wheels that don't turn, lights that don't fade. I thought it was folklore, a story to pass the time. But now with that light pacing me, it felt like truth written in starlight. I pushed Old Bess harder, the engine roaring, the logs shifting in the trailer. The light didn't falter, its glow casting faint shadows on the road, like fingers brushing my tires. I tried the CB again, voice trembling. Lone Pine here, mile marker 82, got a damn light following me. Anyone out there? More static, more silence. The radio was a dead end and I was alone, just me and that thing in the dark. My mind wandered, fear dragging up fragments of my life. I thought about my mother, her poems about the plains, how she'd read them to me under the stars. I thought about Nate, his postcards begging me to visit, to leave the road. I thought about my journal, pages filled with sketches and words, deserts, faces, dreams I've never shared. There's one dream I keep having, a light leading me through the desert to a place where the road ends. I'd written it down, the light calls, but the road is home. Now the dream was real and it terrified me. The light drew closer, now 10 yards off, its glow brighter, almost blinding. I squinted, searching for a shape within it, but it was formless, a pulsing orb that hummed with life. The air in the cab felt heavy, like it was pressing against my chest. I thought about stopping, but the desert was no refuge, just miles of emptiness, no place to hide. I kept driving, the speedometer climbing, 65, 70, the logs creaking louder, the road a blur beneath me. I stopped at a turnout an hour later, my hands shaking, needing to breathe. The light had vanished for a moment, and I hoped it was gone. I stepped out, the desert air cold and sharp, the stars unyielding. I opened my journal, scribbling the light's shape, a glowing sphere, edges soft like a dream. The pencil trembled, the lines jagged. Then I heard it, a hum, low and resonant, vibrating through the ground. I spun around, and there it was, the light, hovering 100 yards out, watching like a silent eye. I scrambled back into the cab, heart racing, and started driving. The light reappeared, pacing me on the left, weaving through the Joshua trees like it knew their secrets. I spoke to it, my voice small. "What are you? What do you want?" No answer, just that glow, relentless. I thought about my mother's poems, her stories of spirits in the land, guardians of places men shouldn't tread. I'd written them down as a kid, lines about lights in the dark. Now they were real, and I was part of their story. The hours stretched, the light never leaving, a companion I couldn't shake. I stopped again at a rest area, writing in my journal to calm my nerves, the light hovering just beyond the lot. I thought about calling Nate, but what would I say? I'm being chased by a light, he'd think I was crazy. I thought about my life, the roads I'd chosen, the people I'd left behind. The desert was my canvas, but it was a lonely one, and now it was painting me into a corner. Dawn broke as I neared Vegas, the sky softening to gray, the city's lights a faint promise. The light vanished with the first rays of sun, leaving no trace. I pulled into the lumberyard, hands trembling as I logged my hours. At a diner later, I showed my journal to a group of drivers, telling them about the light. Most laughed, said I'd been up too long. But one, an old Navajo woman named Lena, studied my sketch, her eyes narrowing. "That's the desert's watcher," she said. "Shows you things, wrecks ghosts to keep you away. You're lucky it let you go." I asked around later, digging into the lore. That stretch of 93 has a history, lights that follow, rigs that vanish, wrecks that linger like echoes. One driver's tale matched mine, a light leading him to a crashed semi, only to disappear when he stopped. I haven't taken that route since. I stick to city runs, keep my journal close. But sometimes in the dark I see a flicker in my mirrors, a glow that doesn't belong, and I hear that hum, like the desert calling me back. I don't answer. I keep driving, my pencil tracing the road, but the desert's memory is long, and its watchers never sleep.